Now we move to part 7 of unit 1 of the NET Yoga syllabus, and that is Yoga in Modern Times. And here we'll be covering yoga according to 4 people: Swami Vivekananda, Aurobindo Ghosh, Ramana Maharshi, and Maharshi Dayanand Saraswati. So first we begin with Swami Vivekananda. Now these are the key points or trivia regarding Vivekananda. He was born as Narendranath Datta in Calcutta. He was a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. He went to Chicago to attend the Parliament of Religions in 1893, and he founded the Ramakrishna Matha and Ramakrishna Mission. His birthday, that is 12th of January, is celebrated across India as National Youth Day. And he passed away in 1902 at the age of 39. It seems that 6 years prior to his demise, he had actually predicted that he would not be living to see 40. That's an interesting fact. Some of Swami Vivekananda's popular doctrines are the divinity of man, universal acceptance of religion, universal brotherhood, oneness of existence, etc. Now, what was yoga according to Swami Vivekananda? Swami Vivekananda defined yoga as any practice which helps to manifest the divinity in man. Vivekananda famously said, each soul is potentially divine and the goal is only to manifest the divinity already in. So, yoga is the means of manifesting that divinity. Yoga is a practice for speeding up evolution. This is another famous definition of yoga given by Vivekananda. He says that uh, in the natural course of things, man will attain perfection. Man will attain godhood or whatever you call it. But it might take more time. For example, in the natural course of time, if say a person might reach perfection in 50 years, yoga is the process of catalyzing that process and crunching the time. So people like Ramakrishna Paramahamsa or Ramana Maharshi, these are people who have practiced yoga and reduced that time and attained liberation early. So that is another definition. Yoga is any practice which strengthens the willpower. This is another definition that we find, not a popular definition as such, but we find Vivekananda saying this. And he considered all the 4 streams of yoga to be equally effective for attaining moksha. He said that one may manifest the divinity by either one of the 4 or combinations of any combinations of the 4 or all of them together. So he believed that all paths lead to moksha, all roads lead to Rome. However, he laid special emphasis on karma yoga since he felt it was best suited for this age. He felt that given the modern lifestyle that we are following, it is not very easy for a person to devote all his time to the practice of Raja Yoga, for example, or for bhakti. Bhakti in the sense because the mindset of people these days has become more intellectual, and so he felt that so bhakti becomes a little hard to cultivate. So and jnana yoga again because a lot of reading is required for that, lot of contemplation. Man does not have that kind of time. The challenges of the modern day requires that man works. So he felt that karma yoga would be better suited for these times. It is not that he felt karma yoga was more potent. It is just that all 4 yogas are equally potent, but karma yoga Swami Vivekananda felt was better suited for these times. He gave lectures on karma yoga, Raja yoga, bhakti yoga, and jnana yoga. They are well-recorded lectures. He delivered them in the United States, and he also wrote a commentary on the Patanjali Yoga-Sutras. The goal of all systems of yoga, according to Vivekananda, is the same. They do not lead to different things. They all converge on one point, which is the attainment of perfection or union with divinity. All the 4 yogas meet at the point where the individual's ego gets dissolved, the point of selflessness. The karma yogi, by constantly putting others before him in the sense that giving importance to others over him, attains the state of selflessness where he forgets about himself. The bhakti yogi, by constantly thinking of his deity, forgets about him and reaches a state of selflessness. The jnana yogi and the Raj yogi, respectively, by following the method of contemplation and following the method of psychic control, realize that they are not this body and mind, so their attachment to this limited body and mind drops away and they attain selflessness. So he says all 4 yogas meet on that point. That is the point of convergence of all the 4 yogas, selflessness. Now, how would Vivekananda define the various yogas? Karma yoga is the secret of work which means to work mindfully and intelligently because our actions determine our character. Bhakti Yoga is a real, genuine search after the Lord, which begins, continues, and ends in love. Raj Yoga is the path of using the willpower to attain mastery over body and mind, and Jnana Yoga is to realize our real nature as Satchit Ananda, his existence, consciousness, bliss, through deep and intense contemplation. Vivekananda makes a distinction between the real man and the apparent man. The apparent man is what we feel right now, that we are this body and mind. We feel so attached to it. Vivekananda says that is the apparent man. It is not the reality. He says the real man is something much more profound and who's behind this apparent form. And that is what he calls Satchidananda. So that is Jnana Yoga. Next we come to Aurobindo Ghosh. Again trivia about him. He was born in Calcutta in 1972. His guru was Vishnu Bhaskar Lele. His system of yoga is called Integral Yoga. And Aurobindo has written a lot of books, and some of the famous books are The Integral Yoga, The Synthesis of Yoga, The Human Cycle, The Mother, Savitri, A Legend and a Symbol, and The Life Divine. These might be important for your MCQs. My guess is from this topic, they might ask MCQs which ask you to, perhaps match each of these four philosophers with their systems of yoga, or perhaps match each of these four philosophers with their works. So it is important to keep these things in mind. And Aurobindo passed away in Pondicherry in 1950. Now, integral yoga. According to Aurobindo, yoga is a methodized effort towards self-perfection by the expression of the potentialities latent in the being. Yoga is rapid and concentrated evolution of being. Now we see in the second definition that it is very similar to what Vivekananda had mentioned. We see that both Vivekananda and Aurobindo look at yoga from an evolutionary point of view. They both of them believe that the very goal of mankind is to attain perfection, is to attain liberation. It will happen whether we do anything or not. Yoga is merely a practice to catalyze that process. As I had mentioned, if by nature, if naturally it would be taking 50 years, yoga is a process by which that 50 years can be crunched into 1 or 2 years. So that is what yoga is. Yoga is rapid and concentrated evolution of being. Integral yoga is more psychological in nature and does not prescribe any asanas or pranayama. Does not mean that Aurobindo was against the practice of them. The system simply does not prescribe. It combines karma yoga, bhakti yoga, and jnana yoga. Integral yoga is the process of evolving from mind to supermind. Now, what are mind and supermind? We'll see in the next slide. So, Aurobindo speaks of mind and supermind. Mind is the cognitive, analytical faculty, whereas supermind is the principle of Satchidananda. Mind is what we normally call as mind, where we think and rationalize, feel emotions, all that. He calls supermind as the principle of Satchidananda. So, supermind is that which is aware of reality as it is. And mind is the cognitive analytical faculty which breaks down information, analyzes them, and does all that. Now, the evolution of mind into supermind passes through the following stages, and they are higher mind, which is the mind beyond the knowledge of the senses, where mind can think for itself, rationalize, and is not purely dependent upon what the sense organs present to it. Illumined mind, which is the mind of vision and spiritual insight, intuition, and overmind, which is cosmic consciousness or the plane of the gods. Now, beyond even this overmind lies supermind, which is the plane of unitary truth consciousness. Aurobindo says that to realize the supermind, a person goes through 3 transformations, and these are psychicization. It's not physicization, it is psychicization, which is turning inward and realizing the divine soul, which is one's spiritual guide. The second process is spiritualization, which happens as a result of the psychicization. Light, peace, and power enter into the body, and this is equivalent to the enlightenment which Vedanta and even Buddhism speaks of. And the third and final stage is the goal of integral yoga is supramentalization, which is the realization of the supermind. And this is the final stage of integral yoga. So keep in mind the triple transformation and also the stages of mind to supermind, higher, illumined, intuition, and over. Keep these in mind. So next we come to Ramana Maharshi. So he was born in 1879 in Tamil Nadu, and he was born as Venkatramana here. And he is widely regarded as self-realized person, a liberated soul, a Jivan Mukta. Jivan Mukta means a person who is liberated while living. There are two kinds of mukti, Jivan Mukti and Videha Mukti. A Jivan Mukta is a person who is liberated while living, whereas a Videha Mukta is a person who gets liberation after dying, after passing away from the body. So he was considered a Jivan Mukta. Him, Ramakrishna Paramutta, for example. These people are considered as Jivan Mukta because they were alive and they were liberated at the same time. So he stayed in Tiruvannamalai as a sannyasin for most of his life. He passed away in 1950 in Ramanashrama in Tiruvannamalai. Now, yoga of Ramana Maharshi laid stress on self-inquiry, Jnana Yoga, as the key means to liberation. He also prescribed various other means. He also accepted other means, but he felt that this was more important. The inquiry into who am I? It's a popular idea of Ramana Maharshi. It was emphasized by Ramana Maharshi to inquire into the nature of this I, the sense of I that we all have. He also recommended bhakti and surrender to the self. He was called Mauna Guru since he imparted teachings through silence and considered it to be the true and perfect Upanishad. In the Dakshinamurti Stotram, we find that Lord Dakshinamurti he sits in silence, and all the doubts of his disciples are dispelled. So the Ramana Maharshi, by some people, is seen as an avatar of Dakshinamurti because he also believed in teaching through silence. Now, the fourth person and the last person we'll be seeing is Maharishi Dayanand Saraswati. Now, Dayanand Saraswati was born as Mool Shankar Tiwari in 1824 in Gujarat. His guru was Virajananda Dandisha. Dayanand Saraswati is popular for founding the Arya Samaj, which was a Hindu reform movement. And he believed strongly in going back to the Vedas and interpreting the Vedas properly, free from superstitions and idolatry. He believed that all the problems of his time could be solved if one understood the Vedas properly and followed the Vedic religion without falling prey to such superstitions and idolatry which were prevalent in that time. That was his belief. And he was the first to call for Swaraj as India for Indians. Now, this call for Swaraj was then later taken up by Bal Gangadhar Tilak and others. His famous works are Satyarth Prakash and commentaries on the Rig and Yajurvedas. He did not complete the commentaries, but they are also part of his works. So, this is a brief introduction to these four modern masters of yoga. And with that, we come to the end of this video. Thank you.